Hey guys, tonight we slip into the muddy, chaotic world of the Middle Ages where survival was a daily toss-up. Picture yourself on a rutted dirt path, the air thick with the sour tang of unwashed bodies and wood smoke curling from crooked chimneys. Your boots sink into the muck, cold, gritty, clinging to your toes like a clingy X. The horizon glows faintly with the promise of a village, but don't get cocky. You probably won't last a week here unless you crack their dirty little secret. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I love knowing where you're listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're not ready for this. The Middle Ages aren't some romantic saga of knights and feasts. It's a world where the scent of damp straw and livestock clings to everything, where the dawn's chill seeps into your bones and lingers like an unwanted guest. Survival's not about heroics, it's about grit, luck, and learning the unspoken rules that kept folks breathing. Let's start with the odds you're up against. The daily grind's a beast. Historical records like the Domesday Book of 1086 show most folks were peasants chained to the land, working sunrise to sunset. You're one of them, hauling water from a murky well, the rope rough and splintery, biting your palms. Your back screaming, your stomach's a hollow knot, and the sun's barely peeked out. The air's sharp with frost's metallic bite even in spring. Breakfast. Forget avocado toast, try a stale rye hunk hard as a brick. Historians still argue whether peasants toiled harder than modern workers, but trust me, you'd feel every aching second. Picture that rope's coarse tug, the water's icy splash on your wrists, your breath puffing in the cold. Here's a quirky tidbit: medieval folk thought morning dew could cure warts. You'd see neighbors crawling through fields at dawn, rubbing wet grass on their hands, muttering prayers per 13th century herbals. You'd smirk, but with barbers doubling as surgeons, you're tempted to join them. Imagine kneeling in that damp grass, the cold soaking your knees, the faint grassy scent teasing a flicker of hope. Now the kicker: you're soft. Modern you with hot showers and takeout isn't cut out for this. The world's texture is harsh, scratchy, wool, tunic splintered, wooden spoons, straw beds, crawling with fleas. Those little pests carry disease, and disease is your real foe. The Black Death's not here yet. Say it's 1,300, but smaller plagues simmer. You'd smell sickness first, a rotting whiff from a hut, sour and heavy. One wrong breath and you're toast. Feel that uneasy churn in your gut. That's the medieval welcome, and it's not warm. Fitting in's your biggest hurdle. Medieval folk didn't trust strangers. Your weird modern slang, like saying vibes instead of humors, could mark you as a spy or heretic. You're learning fast: bow to the Lord, mumble a Latin prayer, and don't ask why the water tastes like dirt. For a laugh, imagine you try to fist bump a farmer, and he stares like you've offered him a dead fish. What's this sorcery? He grumbles, his beard flecked with porridge. You'd backpedal, muttering apologies. Picture his squinting eyes, the air thick with suspicion, your heart racing. Let's lighten it up. You're fetching water when you overhear two kids betting who can spit furthest into the well. One nails your bucket, the spit warm and gross, and cackles. That's my blessing. You'd scowl, but their giggles are infectious and you're half smiling. Medieval kids turning your day into a prank show. Adaptability's your lifeline. You're watching locals, their slouch, their wary glances. You're sniffing the air for rain. A storm could wreck your crops and starve you by winter. Every choice is a gamble: drink that stream water and you might retch. Skip it and you're parched. You're filthy now, hands caked with mud, hair, greasy clothes, reeking like a wet dog. That's the first hint of their secret: dirt's not just normal, it's armor. Feel that grime on your skin, heavy and oddly reassuring, like a badge you didn't ask for. You're starting to get it, but you're not there yet. The village is a maze of rules and you're barely keeping up. Picture yourself by a smoky fire, its heat, a faint tease on your damp feet, the scent of burnt wood and mud, thick as you huddle close, wondering how anyone lives like this. You're not thriving, but you're alive for now. You're still trudging through the Middle Ages, the air heavy with the musky scent of damp earth, and the faint, sour sting of livestock pens nearby. Your boots caked with that gritty filth, you're getting used to squelch in the mud, the cold seeping into your toes like a stubborn chill. You're noticing something: everyone's caked in dirt and they're weirdly fine with it. That's no fluke. The secret to survival isn't just toughing out the grime, it's leaning into it hard. Let's unpack why filth was your sneaky ally in this rough world. You wake to dawn's sharp bite, the air so crisp it nips your lungs. Your bed, a lumpy sack of straw, prickles through your tunic, leaving your skin raw and itchy. You stumble outside the village, already stirring with the clatter of buckets and low voices. The ground slick with dew, the sour whiff of manure hanging like a fog. You'd kill for a hot shower, but here's the deal: nobody bathes like you do. It's not laziness, it's a plan. Historical records like 14th century monastic logs show full baths were rare. Heating water was a chore, and wells often carried a funky aftertaste. You're hauling a bucket from the stream, the water cloudy, its gritty texture coating your fingers. Bathing in that, you're asking for trouble. Feel that icy sting on your hands, the weight of the bucket pulling your arms. That's your reality check. Dirt's a way of life here. You might splash your face with a rag, its coarse weave smelling faintly of mildew, but that's it. Your hair's a greasy tangle, your skin a map of smudges. Bathing fully risked colds or infections, killers in a world without antibiotics. So you let the grime build a crusty layer like armor. Historians still argue whether this filth shielded against fleas or just brewed more disease. Either way, your learning cleans a trap. Scrubbed skin screams outsider or fancy, and both draw trouble: lords sniffing for taxes, thieves sniffing for loot. Smell that sour tang clinging to your tunic? That's you blending in. Here's a quirky bit: medieval folk thought dirt could fend off evil spirits. Per 12th century medical texts, a good layer of grime sealed the pores against bad airs, miasmas blamed for sickness. You'd see a farmer mud-caked and proud, swearing it kept the plague at bay. You're half-tempted, smearing mud on your arms, the cool, grainy weight oddly satisfying. Imagine the village baker eyeing you, nodding approval like you've joined the muddy club. Filth's got 3 perks. First, it's camouflage: you look like every other peasant, less likely to be hassled. Second, it's a barrier, maybe blocking some germs. Third, it's social. The village clocks if you're too clean, and trust me, you don't want their side eye. But there's a catch: your skin's crawling, literally. Fleas love your unwashed tunic, their bites sharp like tiny hot needles. You scratch the dirt flaking under your nails, a grim mix of sweat and earth. A cut could fester fast, turning a nick into a death sentence. You're balancing on a knife's edge: too dirty, and you're sick. Too clean, and you're a target. Feel that itch creeping up your neck. That's the medieval tightrope, and you're wobbling. Let's lighten it up. You're at the well, eyeing water so murky it looks like stew. When a kid bets you a crust of bread, you won't drink it. It's just nature's soup, he chirps, grinning with half his teeth gone. You sip the earthy warmth coating your tongue, and he claps like you've slain a dragon. You'd laugh, but you're already regretting it. Picture his smug face, the air thick with the well's mossy scent, your stomach doing a flip. For another chuckle, imagine you try washing your tunic by dunking it in the stream, only to pull it out covered in algae green and slimy. A passing woman snorts, planning to wear a swamp. You mutter something about new fashion, but she's already cackling. Medieval style critique's always brutal. The secret sinking in filth's not just survival, it's who you are here. You're not you anymore. You're one of them, cloaked in mud. But the fields are calling, and that's a whole new grind. Picture yourself by a smoky fire, its heat, a faint tease on your damp feet, the scent of burnt wood, and your own stale sweat thick as you huddle close, the weight of grime heavier than you expected. You're not clean, but you're hanging on for now. You're still slogging through the Middle Ages, the air thick with the earthy musk of tilled fields, and the faint acrid whiff of manure spread thick across the soil. Your hands still gritty with that filth you're starting to own ache. As you grip a wooden hoe, its handle splintered and rough, digging into your palms. The sun's barely up, but you're sweating, the damp wool of your tunic clinging like a second scratchy skin. A peasant's life is no picnic, and today you're neck-deep in it. The relentless grind of their daily toil isn't just tough, it's a marathon, and you're about to learn why rest was more myth than reality. You're in the fields, the ground lumpy and studded with rocks that jab through your thin soles, each step a small sting. The scent of fresh-turned earth mixes with the sharp tang of fertilizer, a smell that sticks in your throat. Your job's simple but brutal break. The dirt plant seeds, pray for a harvest. Historical records like 13th century manor rolls show peasants worked 12-hour days, often 6 days a week. You're out here from dawn's first gray light, the air chilly and damp until stars speckle the sky. Your back's a knot of pain, your shoulders burn, and the hoe feels heavier with every swing. Feel that dull throb in your arms, the cold dew soaking your knees. That's just the morning's hello. A peasant's day is a slog. You wake to a scrawny rooster's crow, your breath puffing in the hut's frosty air. No coffee, just a swig of flat ale, warm and tasting like regret from a wooden cup that's smooth but splintery. You trudge to the fields, the grass wet and slippery, chilling your legs. You dig sow hall. Lunch is a fist-sized chunk of rye bread, hard as stone, maybe with a sliver of cheese that smells like old socks. You eat standing, the crumbs gritty on your tongue, flies buzzing your face. Smell that faint, moldy whiff of the cheese, the air sharp with sweat. That's your fuel, and it's barely enough. Here's a quirky tidbit: peasants sometimes owed their Lord Boone work extra labor during harvest per 1290s Chronicles. You're out there swinging a scythe until your hands blister, the blade's edge glinting but dull, knowing a missed day could cost your family's plot. The Lord's steward, a wiry guy with a ledger and a smirk, tracks your every move. You're muttering curses, but you keep swinging. Imagine his quill scratching the air, heavy with the grassy scent of cut stalks, your arms begging for a break. Historians still argue whether peasants got any real downtime. Some say Sundays were for rest. Others point to church feasts where women cooked and men fixed tools, no break in sight. Either way, you're not kicking back. Rest means patching your leaky roof, the straw damp and prickly, or mending shoes with twine that cuts your fingers. The texture of this life is unforgiving: calluses on your hands, dirt under your nails, exhaustion in your bones. Feel that weight on your eyelids, heavy as the earth you're breaking, that survival wearing you thin. Let's lighten it up. You're hoeing a row when you accidentally unearth a turnip, half rotten but huge. A kid nearby hauling a basket grins and bows like you're a knight. "All hail the turnip king," he chirps, his voice cracking. You toss it at him and he ducks, giggling. You're smirking, the air warm with a fleeting breeze. Picture his cheeky grin, the turnip's earthy whiff lingering, your mood lifting for a second. For another laugh, imagine you try organizing your tools, stacking them neatly, only for the steward to scoff. "What's this? A scholar's desk." He kicks them over, and you're scrambling to hide your modern fussiness, muttering about efficiency. Medieval bosses allergic to innovation. Survival's about keeping up. Screw up plant too late and your crop fails. No crop, no food, no rent. You're out homeless, or worse. The village doesn't do handouts. You're watching neighbors, their faces lined and leathery, judging your work. That grime you're wearing, it's proof you're one of them, caked on like a badge. But the work's unending, and a bad harvest could wipe you out. Smell that sweat mixing with soil, the air heavy with dust. That's you earning your place, one aching swing at a time. You're tougher than you thought, but toughness isn't enough. The fields are merciless, and you're only as good as your last row. Picture yourself collapsing by a smoky fire. Its heat, a soft whisper on your aching feet. The scent of burnt wood and damp earth heavy as you slump, bone-tired. You're not resting, but you're still here for now. You're still scraping by in the Middle Ages, the air heavy with the musty scent of damp grain and a faint, sour whiff of something gone off. Your stomach's a hollow knot, growling louder than a stray dog, and your hands still raw from the field's relentless grind clutch a wooden bowl, its surface worn but splintery. The village hums around you, but all you can think about is food, or how little there is. Eating here isn't about taste or choice. It's about staying alive. And you're about to learn how scarce, sketchy meals kept folks teetering on the edge. You're crouched outside your hut, the ground cold and lumpy, pressing into your knees like a grudging host. Dawn's chill wraps you tight, your breath puffing faintly, the air sharp with a frosty sting. Your bowl holds a grayish sludge pottage, they call it, smelling faintly of mildew, its texture gritty as you stir with a chipped spoon. This is breakfast if you're lucky. Historical records like 14th century household accounts show peasants lived on bread pottage and ale, barely enough to keep you upright. Feel that gnawing ache in your gut, the spoon's rough edge against your fingers. That's hunger. And it's your new shadow. Food's a fight here. Your staples: rye or barley bread baked weekly in a communal oven, dense and chewy, sometimes flecked with chaff that crunches like gravel. By day 5 it's rock hard, and you're soaking it in ale to choke it down, the liquid warm and flat, tasting like stale regret. Pottage is your other go-to. A watery stew of grains, maybe a wilted cabbage leaf, or a sad onion boiled over a smoky fire. The pot's iron tang seeps into every bite, the broth thin and lukewarm, meat pure fantasy. A scrap of salted pork might grace a feast, but you're stuck with what grows, and it's never enough. Smell that faint sour steam rising from the bowl, the air thick with smoke. That's your meal, and it's already cooling. Here's a quirky tidbit. Medieval folk, ate trenchers, stale bread slabs used as plates per 13th century chronicles. You pile your pottage on one, the crust tough and slightly damp from grease, hoping it's not moldy. You'd eat it afterward or toss it to the dogs, its texture like chewing a sponge. Imagine cutting into that trencher, the faint, musty whiff, hitting your stomach, both eager and wary. Historians still argue whether famine was a constant shadow or just a bad year's curse. Some point to crop failures like the Great Famine of 1315, where villages starved. Others say clever peasants stretched meals with wild herbs or acorns. Either way, you're hungry. Your meals are dull, often spoiled and never filling. That pottage you're eyeing, it sat in a warm hut overnight. One bad spoonful and you're sprinting for the latrine pit, if you make it. Feel that uneasy churn as you swallow the broth's warmth fading fast. That's every bite's gamble. Survival's about caution. You're sniffing your food first, the air sharp with rot if it's gone bad. You're hoarding scraps, a handful of dried peas rattling in a cloth sack, their texture chalky and stubborn. You're also watching the seasons. A lean harvest means a brutal winter, and you're counting onions like they're gold. That gritty filth you're wearing, it's in your food too, grit crunching between your teeth, a constant reminder of the earth you're tied to. Smell that dusty, earthy whiff on your bread, that's your world baked right in. Let's lighten it up. You're stirring your pottage when a neighbor, a wiry guy with a gap-toothed grin, leans over and says, "Add a snail for flavor." You blink, thinking he's joking, but he's dead serious, holding one up, its slimy shell glinting. You mutter, "I'll pass on the gourmet twist," and he cackles, tossing it in his own bowl. Picture his smug, chew the air heavy with the pot's sour steam, your appetite shrinking. For another laugh, imagine you try spicing up your bread by rubbing it with an onion only to drop it in the dirt. A kid nearby snickers, now it's got extra crunch. You brush it off, muttering about earthy seasoning, but the village dogs are already circling. Medieval dining, always a team sport. The secret's tying in here. Filth's not just on your skin, it's in your food, masking rot, tricking you into eating what's barely edible. But hunger's a harsh teacher and you're learning fast. Picture yourself by a smoky fire, its heat, a faint tease on your cold hands, the scent of stale pottage lingering as you scrape the bowl, clean stomach still rumbling. You're not full, but you're tougher for now. You're still clawing through the Middle Ages, the air sharp with the metallic tang of rain-soaked earth, and a faint sickly whiff of decay that clings like a bad memory. Your clothes heavy with that gritty filth you're learning to live with stick to your skin, the coarse wool chafing your neck with every move. Hunger's your constant shadow, but there's a darker threat, lurking disease. The grim specter of plague hangs over every hut, and you're about to learn why a single cough could unravel your world in a heartbeat. You're trudging through the village, the mud sucking at your boots, its cold, squelching grip slowing each step. The sky's a bruised gray spitting drizzle that stings your face like tiny pinpricks. You pass a hut where the air shifts, a sour, rotting smell like meat forgotten in the sun stops you cold. Inside, someone's coughing, a wet, rattling hack that twists your stomach. Historical records like the 1348 Chronicles of the Black Death show disease was a merciless reaper. Even before the big plague, let's say it's 1,300, smallpox, dysentery, and fevers tore through villages like wildfire. You're not safe, and neither is anyone else. Feel that prickle on your skin, sharp and uneasy. That's fear creeping in. Disease isn't just a bad day. It's chaos. You're surrounded by risks. That murky water you sipped, the fleas in your straw bed, even the neighbor you traded with at the market. You'd spot the signs, a friend's flushed face, sweat beading on their brow, the air around them thick with a cloying, sickly sweetness. You back away, heart thumping, because a single touch could be your end. The village is small, maybe 50, souls crammed close, and one sneeze spreads fast. You're eyeing everyone now, their gaunt faces and muffled coughs suddenly suspect. Smell that faint sour tang in the air, heavy, with warning. That's death, circling closer. Here's a quirky tidbit: medieval folk blamed bad air for sickness per 13th century medical texts. Miasma theory had them burning herbs or clutching posies to fend off foul smells. You'd see a woman stuffing lavender in her pockets, its sharp floral scent cutting through the village's usual stink. You're trying it too, gripping a sprig, its brittle leaves crumbling in your palm, a faint hope against the odds. Imagine that lavender's clean whiff, a fragile shield in a world of rot. Historians still argue whether miasma beliefs helped or hurt. Some say burning herbs repelled fleas, others think it distracted from real culprits like filthy water. Either way, you're dodging disease with guesswork. You steer clear of sick huts, but there's only one well, one church, one life shared by all. That grime you're wearing, it might block some germs or at least make you look too rough to bother. But disease doesn't care. A scratch on your hand crusted with mud could fester the skin hot and throbbing. Ignore it and you're begging for trouble. Feel that itch in your throat, just a tickle or something worse? That's the question haunting you. Let's lighten it up. You're skirting a sick hut when a kid snot-nosed and bold tosses you a plague-proof charm, a dried toad foot, its texture leathery and gross. Wear it, or you're done, he crows. You mutter, I'd rather kiss the toad, and he howls, running off. You're smirking, the air sharp with rain, but you pocket the foot anyway. Picture his cheeky grin, the charm's musty whiff lingering, your skepticism wobbling. For another laugh, imagine you try purifying the air by waving a smoldering herb bundle, only to set your sleeve smoking. A neighbor snorts, burning yourself to scare the plague. You pat it out, muttering about smoke signals, but the crowd's already chuckling. Medieval safety tips, always a hot mess. Survival's about instinct. You're sniffing the air for rot, steering clear of bad vibes. You're keeping your distance, but that's tough. When you share everything, water pews fate. A cough could be nothing or everything, and you're praying it's not the latter. Picture yourself by a smoky fire. Its heat, a faint tease on your damp hands. The scent of wet wool and quiet fear, heavy as you listen for coughs in the dark. You're not sick, but you're not safe for now. You're still weaving through the Middle Ages, the air thick with the damp, musty scent of wet straw and a faint, sour whiff of bodies that haven't seen soap in weeks. Your skin prickles under that gritty filth. You're starting to call home the wool of your tunic, heavy and rough, chafing like an old grudge. You're dodging disease, but there's another puzzle: hygiene, or what passes for it. The medieval take on staying clean is a wild mix of shield and snare, and you're about to dive into the heart of their dirty secret. You're by the village stream, its water gurgling over slimy rocks flecked with bits of muck you'd rather not name. The morning's cold, the air sharp enough to bite your lungs, and your hands go numb as you dip them in. The water's icy gritty, coating your fingers like a second skin. You're tempted to scrub your face, but hold up, bathing's not what you think. Historical records like 13th century monastic rules show full washes were rare. Hot water was a chore, and clean streams were a myth. You'd rather splash your hands and move on than risk a soak. Feel that chill creeping up your arms, the stream's murky tang stinging your nose. That's your bath done and dusted. Hygiene's a patchwork of half measures. You wipe your face with a rag, its weave coarse smelling of mildew and regret. Teeth. Maybe you chew a twig, its woody fibers scraping your gums raw. Hair, a greasy nest matted with sweat and dust. Bathhouses exist in bigger towns, but they're for the rich or the reckless, part spa, part gossip den. You're a peasant stuck with this stream, and even that's dicey. Wet clothes in this damp, chilly world mean a cold, and a cold could be your curtain call. Smell that faint, earthy whiff of the water, heavy with silt. That's your only shot at clean. Here's a quirky tidbit: medieval folk used ashen vinegar paste as a cleanser per 12th century medical texts. Imagine slathering it on the mix, gritty and sharp, smelling like a burnt pickle gone wrong. You try it, the paste drying to a flaky crust, and you're wondering if you're cleaner or just crunchier. Picture the village kid staring, one whispering. He's turning to stone as you flake ash like a shedding lizard. Historians still argue whether sparse washing dodged germs or brewed them. Some say it skipped waterborne bugs. Others think filthy clothes were disease magnets. Either way, you're not clean by modern standards. Your skin's a canvas of dirt, tacky and rough, and fleas love your tunic, their bites hot and sharp. Scratch too hard and you're begging for infection, especially with that cut still throbbing from rough days on the road. You're wobbling on a tightrope. Wash too much and you're a village oddball. Wash too little and you're a flea buffet. Feel that crawl on your neck, a tickle or a pest. That's the gamble you're living. Let's lighten it up. You're splashing in the stream when a woman nearby washing pots catches you, eyeing the water. Planning to shine like a lord, she teases, her grin sharp. You quip, "Just polishing my charm," and she laughs, flicking water at you cold and slimy. You're chuckling, the air fresh with the stream's mossy scent. Picture her sly wink, the water's chill lingering, your mood a touch lighter. For another laugh, imagine you try freshening up by rubbing mint leaves on your hands, only to smell like a walking stew. A kid sniffs you and yelps. Your supper now. You mutter about herbal trends, but he's already spreading the tale. Medieval grooming, always a village headline. Survival's about balance. You're embracing the grime to blend in, but you're sniffing your clothes, their sour, musky scent, a constant reminder of your new normal. Wash too much and whispers of witchcraft like those you've heard could tag you. Too little, and you're a health risk. You're learning to play the part, dirt and all. Picture yourself by a smoky fire, its heat a soft whisper on your damp hands, the scent of wet wool and ash heavy as you huddle close, grime settling deeper. You're not clean, but you're still kicking for now. You're still shivering through the Middle Ages, the air heavy with the damp chill of stone and a faint acrid whiff of burnt tallow from flickering candles. Your boots, caked with that gritty filth you're learning to wear like a badge, feel heavier as you step into a new world, a castle. It's no storybook palace. The walls loom slick with moisture, radiating a cold that sinks into your bones like a stubborn ache. You're about to discover the cold, hard truth of castle life. Warmth was a rare treat, and you're nowhere near the guest list. You're in the castle's great hall, the floor strewn with rushes, their prickly damp texture crunching underfoot, smelling faintly of mold and spilled ale. Shadows swallow the high ceiling and the stone walls breathe a chill that cuts through your threadbare tunic. You're here delivering grain from the village, but don't expect a cozy welcome. Historical records like 14th century noble household accounts show castles were drafty and smoky, miserable for most. You're shivering, your breath puffing in the dim light, fingers tingling from the cold. Feel that icy sting in your hands, the air heavy with stone's damp musk. That's the castle's handshake. And it's not friendly. Castles were built for war, not comfort. The walls, thick as a man's height, block arrows but trap the cold. Narrow window slits let in slivers of gray light, and gusts of wind carrying the faint, mossy scent of the moat outside. The hall's fire, a pile of logs spitting sparks, barely warms the room. You edge closer, the smoky heat stinging your eyes, but your back still freezing. Nobles get furs and tapestries. You get a thin cloak, its wool rough and reeking of wet dog. Smell that faint charred tang of the fire, the rush's musty whiff beneath. That's your only shot at warmth. And it's stingy. Here's a quirky tidbit: servants sometimes slept with livestock for heat per 13th century chronicles. Imagine you're desperate, curling up in the stables, the straw prickly under you, a goat's warm, bristly body your only blanket. The air's thick, with the musky scent of animal hide, and fleas are already eyeing you. Picture the goat's sleepy grunt, its breath hot and damp, your nose wrinkling at the trade-off. Historians still argue whether castles were colder than peasant huts. Some say stone held the chill worse. Others think nobles' fires and food tipped the scales. Either way, you're not noble. You're hauling a water bucket from the well, its rope slimy and cold, the water splashing your wrists with an icy bite. You're dreaming of the village fire, smoky but familiar. Warmth's a luxury and you're scraping for scraps of it. Feel that shiver down your spine, sharp and relentless. That's the castle's lesson sinking in. Survival's about chasing heat. You linger by the fire, ignoring the nobles' glares, their velvet cloaks rustling as they pass. You're watching the servants' faces, chapped hands red, scurrying with wood or scrubbing pots. You blend in that grime you're wearing, making you invisible, just another worker. But the cold's brutal. Your toes are numb. Your boots stiff and damp. The leather creaking. A draft whistles through a window sharp, with the moat's earthy tang. Smell that damp, mossy whiff, the air heavy with smoke. That's the castle's breath, cold and unforgiving. Let's lighten it up. You're warming your hands by the fire when a servant, a wiry kid, offers you a noble's trick, rubbing your palms with onion to trap the heat. You try it, the onion's sharp sting making you wince, and he grins. Smells like victory, eh? You quip. More like defeat, but you're both chuckling, the air warm with the fire's glow. Picture his sly nod, the onion's bite lingering, your hands no warmer but your mood lifted. For another laugh, imagine you try bowing to a passing lady, mimicking the nobles, only to slip on a rush and flail like a drunk juggler. She sniffs stick to your buckets and glides off. You mutter about grace lessons, but the servants are snickering. Medieval etiquette, always a trap. The secret's still here. Your grimes, your ticket, marking you as a worker, not a threat. But the castle's filth, greasy, Russia's smoky air, hidden chamber pots, has its own rules. You're adapting, but warmth's the real fight. Picture yourself by that stingy fire, its smoky heat a faint tease on your frozen hands, the scent of burnt wood and damp stone heavy as you huddle close, colder than you'd like. You're not warm, but you're hanging on for now. You're still battling through the Middle Ages, the air thick with the metallic clank of armor, and a musky whiff of oiled leather that hangs heavy in the morning fog. Your hands still raw from the castle's chilly stone feel the weight of a new challenge. You're on a training field, the ground churned to mud, its texture slick and cold, tugging at your boots like a grudging foe. You're about to strap on a knight's armor, and trust me, chivalry's no fairy tale. It's a crushing grind, and you're about to feel every ounce of its burden. You're standing in a muddy clearing, the fog curling around you, its damp chill kissing your cheeks with a clammy touch. The air smells of wet grass and the sharp tang of sweat from the men nearby, their breath puffing in the cold. A squire, a wiry kid with a serious face, hands you a padded gambeson, its quilted fabric stiff, reeking faintly of mildew. You pull it on the weight, dragging your shoulders. Then comes the chainmail, 60 pounds of clinking rings, cold as ice against your skin. Historical records like 14th century armorers' inventories show knights hauled up to 100 pounds of gear. Your knees are buckling, your back screaming, and you're not even fully geared up. Feel that pressure on your chest, the chainmails bite through the padding. That's just the warm-up. Armor's a lifesaver in a fight, but it's hell to wear. The chainmail's texture is brutal. Thousands of tiny rings, digging and chafing with every step, like a net of stubborn burrs. A breastplate goes over it, its polished surface icy, creaking against your ribs. The helmet's the worst, a steel bucket heavy and hot, muffling the world until your own ragged breathing echoes in your ears. You're sweating, the salty sting trickling into your eyes, but the air's too cold to shed anything. Moving's like wading through sludge, slow, heavy, exhausting. Smell that faint, oily whiff of the armor, the mud's earthy tang beneath. That's your new skin, and it's no friend. Here's a quirky tidbit: knights padded their armor with straw-stuffed layers for cushioning per 13th century training manuals. Imagine you're stuffing straw into your gambeson, the stalks prickly, jabbing your fingers, smelling like a stale barn. It helps a little, but you're still a walking anvil. The squire's tightening your straps, his hands quick but rough, and you're wincing. Picture that straw's dusty scent, the squire's focused frown, your body begging for a break. Historians still argue whether armor was worth the pain. Some say it made knights unstoppable. Others think it slowed them down, easy pickings for archers. Either way, you're just training, not fighting. Thank your stars. You swing a wooden sword, the motion sluggish, your arms burning like they're on fire. The field's a mess, mud sucking at your boots, its cold grip slowing you further. You're starting to see why knights were rare. Only the tough or the unhinged signed up for this. Feel that burn in your thighs, sharp and relentless. That's the knight's life, and you're barely an hour in. Let's lighten it up. You're practicing a stance when the squire barks. Look fierce. You puff out your chest, snarling like a tavern brawler, only to hear him snort. You're scaring the sparrows, not the enemy. You quip, "Good, I'll start with the birds," and he shakes his head, grinning. The air's fresh with fog, and you're chuckling despite the weight. Picture his amused squint, the chainmails clink, as you shift your mood a touch lighter. For another laugh, imagine you try saluting the master knight with a grand wave, only to whack your helmet, the clang echoing like a dropped pot. The trainees snicker, one muttering, "He's signaling the moon." You mutter about new traditions, but you're red-faced under the visor. Medieval training, always humbling. Survival's about grit. You're learning to move with the weight, to breathe through the helmet's suffocating heat. You're watching the trainee squires and hopefuls, their faces slick with sweat, red as beets. Your grime, that filthy cloak you've worn since the village, hides you as just another grunt. But a misstep could land you face down in the mud, the armor pinning you like a flipped turtle. Smell that damp, earthy tang of the field, the sweat soaking your padding. That's your pride taking a hit. The secret's still alive. Your filth blends you with this muddy, sweaty crew, but armor's grime, rust, sweat, old blood has its own rules. You're tougher, but the knight's burden is no joke. Picture yourself slumped by a smoky fire, the armor off the ache, lingering the scent of mud and metal heavy as you catch your breath, bone weary. You're no knight, but you're still standing for now. You're still pushing through the Middle Ages, the air thick with the musty scent of old parchment and a faint waxy whiff of burning candles that flicker in the dim light. Your legs ache from that grueling night's training, and your tunic, still caked with that gritty filth you're wearing like a second skin, clings to you, its texture rough and damp. You're back in the village, but the vibe's heavier now. The church looms ahead, its stone walls cold and slick with moss radiating a chill that settles into your bones. The church's iron grip rules every corner of this world, and you're about to learn how faith wasn't just a choice, it was a leash tugging at every step you take. You're standing in the churchyard, the ground uneven, studded with gravestones worn smooth and slimy from last night's rain. The air's sharp, carrying the faint, earthy tang of fresh dug soil from a new grave nearby. Sunday Mass is non-negotiable, and you're here shuffling inside with the crowd. Historical records like 13th century diocesan registers show the church controlled everything: your work, your meals, even your marriage. The pews are hard splintery under you, the air heavy with incense that stings your nose like a sharp rebuke. The priest's voice drones in Latin, a low hum, and you're kneeling the stone floor, biting your knees with a cold, unyielding edge. Feel that dull ache in your legs, the incense's smoky bite. That's submission medieval style. And it's not optional. The church isn't just a building. It's the village's heartbeat. Skip Mass and you're not just slacking, you're suspicious. The priest, a gaunt man with eyes like chipped flint, tracks absences like a hawk. You're tithing 10% of your crops, those precious onions you've been hoarding to the church, no arguments. The tithe barn smell, dusty grain mixed with mold lingers as you hand over your share, the sack's coarse weave scraping your palms. Every move's watched. Eat meat on a fast day and you're locked in a cell, fasting on bread and guilt. Smell that faint, musty whiff of the barn, the air thick with obligation. That's the church wrapping you tight. Here's a quirky tidbit: church bells were thought to chase off storms per 12th century chronicles. You're out there pulling the bell rope, its coarse fibers burning your hands, the clang echoing over fields, supposedly scaring demons away. The thunder cracks and you pull harder, half convinced it's working, the air sharp with ozone. Imagine that rope's rough tug, the bell's deafening peal, your heart racing with a mix of doubt and hope. Historians still argue whether the church was a comfort or a cage. Some say it offered hope and community. Others think it crushed free thought, especially for women. Either way, you're feeling the weight. You're whispering prayers you barely grasp, the words dry and heavy on your tongue, while the congregation's bowed heads reek of sweat and smoke. Your grime, that filthy cloak you've worn since your first muddy days, blends you in, but the church's rules are a maze. One wrong step and you're marked. Feel that prickle of eyes on your back, sharp and judging. That's the village, weighing your soul. Let's lighten it up. You're fumbling through a Latin prayer, mangling the words, when the old woman beside you hisses, "You're summoning pigs, not saints." You mutter, "Good, I'm hungry," and she stifles a laugh, her face wrinkling like old leather. The air's warm with candlelight, and you're both smirking just for a moment. Picture her sly glance, the incense's smoky tang lingering your tension, easing a touch. For another laugh, imagine you try blessing your pew with a sprig of herbs, thinking it's pious, only to have the priest snap. This isn't a stew pot. You mumble about holy seasoning, but the congregation's snickering. Medieval devotion, always a recipe for trouble. Survival's about playing the part. You mumble prayers loud enough to be heard, drop a coin cold and worn in the offering, and keep your head low. The priest's peddling indulgences, forgiveness for a price, and you hate parting with your scraps. Defiance isn't an option, though heresy's a fire you don't want to smell. Smell that faint waxy scent of the candles, warm but sharp. That's the church's glow, and it burns. The secret's here. Your grimes, your mask, hiding you among the unwashed faithful, but the church's filth, fear, control. The weight of sin clings tighter. You're navigating, but it's a tightrope. Picture yourself outside the church, the cold stone under your feet, the scent of wet earth and incense, heavy as you breathe free, if only for a moment. You're not holy, but you're still here for now. You're still weaving through the Middle Ages, the air buzzing with the sharp scent of crushed herbs and a sweaty tang from the crush of bodies in a crowded market. Your feet, sore from kneeling in that chilly church, sink into the muddy street, its texture slick and cold, tugging at your boots like a clingy marsh. The village market's a whirlwind. Shouts, clinking coins, the faint bleat of goats, but it's no cozy fare. This is a risky hustle, and you're about to learn why bartering here could cost you more than your hard-won goods. You're elbowing through the market, the crowd pressing close, their woolen cloaks scratchy against your arms, reeking of damp and toil. The air's a jumble of smells, warm, crusty bread cutting through the damp, rotting fish sour and sharp, earthy root vegetables piled high. You're clutching a sack of turnips, their knobby skins rough in your hands, hoping to trade for cheese or cloth. Historical records like 14th century market charters show trade was the village's pulse. But it was a minefield. Scams, thieves, and bad deals could sink you. Feel that nervous flutter in your chest, the sack's weight pulling your arm. That's the market's rhythm, and it's relentless. Bartering's your game, no coins for you. You're offering your turnips to a trader with a squinting eye, his stall stacked with cheese, its rind waxy smelling faintly of feet. You haggle, voices rising, but he's sizing you up. Markets had rules, but cheating was common. Short waits, moldy goods, watered-down ale. You're checking everything, sniffing the cheese, feeling its soft, not slimy texture. A bad trade means spoiled food or a lost harvest and you're not starving yet. Smell that faint sour whiff from his stall, the air thick with haggling shouts. That's your first warning, sharp and urgent. Here's a quirky tidbit. Markets had pie powder courts for quick justice, named for travelers' dusty feet per 13th century records. Imagine a thief caught swapping pebbles for grain dragged to a judge mid-market. You're haggling when a scuffle erupts, a woman screaming about fake coins, her voice shrill, the air sharp with her fury. She's hauled off, the crowd jeering, and you grip your turnips tighter. Picture her flailing, the market's dusty tang rising, your heart skipping a beat. Historians still argue whether markets were fairer than they seemed. Some say regulations kept things honest. Others point to endless fraud complaints. Either way, you're on edge, dodging pickpockets whose quick fingers brush your cloak, eyeing traders for smirks or slick pitches. Your grime, that filthy cloak you've worn since your first muddy days, marks you as a nobody, easy to con but hard to notice. Your haggling hard voice, low every deal, a tightrope. Feel that sweat on your brow, warm despite the chill. That's the market's heat, and it's not just the sun. Let's lighten it up. You're bartering when a trader offers premium cheese, waving it like a prize. You sniff it, wince at its barnyard reek, and quip, this aged in a cow's armpit. He laughs, tossing you a smaller wedge for your cheek, and you're grinning, the air warm with fresh bread nearby. Picture his toothy grin, the cheese's pungent whiff lingering, your mood a touch brighter. For another laugh, imagine you try upselling your turnips, calling them Lord's choice only for a kid to snort. They're dirt's choice. You fire back, that's gourmet grit, but the crowd's chuckling and you're half laughing too. Medieval sales pitch is always a crowd pleaser. Survival's about sharpness. You're sniffing out deals, catching the moldy edge of a loaf before you trade. You're watching for shifty types lingering too close, their hands hidden. The church's tithe collectors lurk, eyeing your haul, their presence heavy as incense. Your grimes, your disguise, blending you with the muddy throng, but every trade's a test. Smell that faint, greasy whiff of the cheese you won. The market's din buzzing. That's your prize if you're clever enough. The secret's alive here. Your filth hides you in the sweaty crowd, but the market's grime, spoiled goods, sticky coins, the stink of deceit has its own rules. You're playing the game, but it's a gauntlet. Picture yourself by a smoky fire, the market's chaos fading, the scent of mud and herbs heavy, as you cradle your hard-earned cheese, weary but sharper. You're not rich, but you're still in it for now. You're still picking your way through the Middle Ages, the air heavy with the damp chill of evening, and a faint, smoky whiff of dying fires curling from village huts. Your hands, still gripping that hard-won cheese from the bustling market, are gritty with dust, the waxy rind cool and smooth against your palm. The village feels quieter tonight, but there's a tension, a whisper of fear that prickles your skin like a cold breeze. You're stepping into the shadow of witch hunt paranoia, where a single rumor could ignite a deadly accusation, and trust is as scarce as a full belly. You're walking a narrow path between huts, the ground muddy and uneven, its cold, sticky texture sucking at your boots with every step. The sky's a bruised purple, spitting a faint mist that clings to your face. You overhear a hushed spat, two women voices low, muttering about a neighbor's odd ways, their words sharp with suspicion. Historical records like 14th century trial documents show witch hunts were rare before the 1400s, but fear was a constant hum. A bad crop, a sick cow, or a stray glance could brand you cursed. You keep your head down, but eyes are everywhere. Feel that chill on your neck, sharp and uneasy. That's the village watching. Paranoia's a plague here. The church's heavy hand with its sermons on devils and heretics fuels the fire. You're no witch, but you're an outsider, still learning the village's rhythm. Your modern habits, humming a tune or staring at the stars, could raise brows. You pass a woman milking a cow, the air warm, with the musky scent of hide, her hands rough and chapped. She glares as if your shadow's bad luck, and you hurry on the mud, squelching, your pulse quickening. One wrong word and you're the next whisper. Smell that faint, sour whiff of milk, the air thick with distrust. That's the village turning inward. Here's a quirky tidbit: some believed witches could be tested by swimming per 13th century legal texts. Tied up and tossed in water, you'd sink if innocent, float if guilty. Imagine your accused dragged to that icy stream you've avoided, its water biting your skin as they bind your wrists with coarse rope, its fibers cutting in. You'd sink, sure, but drowning's no prize. Picture that water's glassy chill, the crowd's murmurs, your heart hammering with dread. Historians still argue whether early witch hunts were about fear or control. Some say they targeted misfits to enforce order. Others think they scapegoated bad luck. Either way, you're feeling the pressure. You're avoiding eye contact, your grime, that filthy cloak you've worn since your first muddy days, blending you with the crowd. But whispers spread fast. That woman from the market, the one who raged over fake coins, is now cursed for her outburst. You saw her fire, but you're staying mum. Feel that knot in your gut, tight and heavy. That's the village's gaze hunting its next mark. Let's lighten it up. You're fetching water when a kid bold as brass points at your shadow and gasps. It's too long for a mortal. You quip blame the sunset, not sorcery, and toss a pebble at his feet, making him jump. He laughs, scampering off, and you're grinning, the air fresh with mist. Picture his wide-eyed scamper, the water's mossy tang lingering your tension, easing a fraction. For another laugh, imagine you try warding off suspicion by tucking a garlic clove in your pocket, only to have it slip out mid-chat. A man sniffs, smirks, and says, planning to cook the devil. You mutter, just spicing up my soul, but the crowd's chuckling. Medieval superstitions always sniffing you out. Survival's about vanishing. You nod at the right moments, mutter prayers loud enough to pass, and avoid quirks like scrubbing too much a lesson from your streamside days. The alehouse, its air thick with the yeasty tang of spilled brew, is a gossip hub. You sip your watery ale, its texture flat and warm, and keep quiet. But silence isn't enough. A fever, a dead goat, and you're in the crosshairs. Smell that faint, smoky whiff of the alehouse fire. The whispers sharper than the brew. That's your cue to stay sharp. The secret's sharper now. Your grime's your mask, hiding you in the muddy throng, but the village's filth, suspicion, blame cuts deeper. You're balancing, but every whisper's a threat. Picture yourself by a smoky fire. Its heat. A soft whisper on your damp hands. The scent of wet wool and quiet fear. Heavy, as you listen for murmurs in the dark. You're not cursed, but you're not safe for now. You're still inching through the Middle Ages, the air heavy with the damp chill of evening, and a faint, musty whiff of old herbs that lingers like a half-forgotten remedy. Your hands still gritty from clutching that market cheese itch under a crust of dirt, the texture rough and slightly tacky against your skin. The village feels tense after those witchy whispers, but a new challenge looms, medicine or whatever they call it here. You're about to face medieval cures, leeches, potions, and wild guesses that might leave you worse off than the ailment itself. You're hunched in a dim hut, the air thick with the sour tang of sweat and a sharp vinegary whiff that stings your nose. The floor's packed dirt, cold and uneven under your knees, and a small fire spits smoke that burns your eyes. You've got a fever, maybe from that dodgy water you drank, or a flea bite from your unwashed days. Your skin's hot, clammy, and you're shivering, each shake rattling your bones. The village healer, a wiry woman with twig-like fingers, eyes you like a puzzle. Historical records like 13th century medical texts show medieval medicine, mixed herbs, prayers, and outright weirdness. You're in for a ride. Feel that heat under your skin, the fire's smoky sting. That's your body fighting and it's struggling. Medicine, here's a roll of the dice. The healer's muttering prayers, her breath warm and sour as she leans close. She hands you a clay cup, its surface gritty, filled with a potion nettle, moldy bread, and who knows, what's smelling like wet leaves gone bad. You choke it down, the slimy texture coating your tongue, your stomach lurching. Then come the leeches, their slick black bodies wriggling in a jar, glinting in the firelight. She slaps one on your arm, its bite, a sharp pinch, cold and wet as it latches on. She swears it's balancing your humors, but you're not sold. Smell that faint, metallic whiff of blood, the potion's rancid edge. That's your cure, and it's no comfort. Here's a quirky tidbit: healers sometimes used unicorn horn powder, really narwhal tusk or bone, as a cure-all per 12th century apothecary lists. Imagine her sprinkling a pinch of this magic dust, its texture chalky into your potion, swearing it'll fix you. You raise an eyebrow, but you're too woozy to argue, the air heavy with her herbal brew. Picture that dust settling the hut's smoky haze, thickening your skepticism, flickering like the fire. Historians still argue whether these treatments helped or harmed. Some say herbs like feverfew eased pain. Others think leeches and bad water bred more infections. Either way, you're stuck. Your fever's climbing, your head pounding like a drum. The healer's next move, a poultice of dung and clay, smells like a barnyard nightmare. Its warm, grainy texture sticking to your skin like glue. You flinch, but she's insistent, her hands firm. You're praying to those saints you mumbled to in church, but they're not picking up. Feel that heavy ache in your bones, the poultice's earthy stink. That's the cure. And it's anyone's guess if it works. Let's lighten it up. The healer's chanting a healing rhyme, but you catch her mix up the words, calling you a feverish turnip. You quip, "At least I'm a hot vegetable," and she snorts, her stern face cracking into a grin. The air's warm with the fire's glow, and you're chuckling despite the leech on your arm. Picture her quick laugh, the potion's musty whiff lingering your mood a touch lighter. For another laugh, imagine you try helping by stirring the potion only to splash it on the healer's apron. She glares, muttering, "You're curing my patience." You mumble about extra seasoning, but she's already shooing you back. Medieval medicine, always a team effort gone wrong. Survival's about grit. Refusing the healer could spark whispers of ingratitude, or worse, that witchy nonsense you've dodged. You're sniffing the potion for rot, its rancid edge making you wince, and dodging her pricier cures like that unicorn dust. Your grime, that filthy cloak you've worn since your muddy start, blends you with the village's unwashed, but it's no shield against fever. Smell that faint herby tang of the poultice, the fire's smoky haze. That's your lifeline. And it's grim. The secret's stark here. Filth's your norm on your skin and your cures. That dung poultice. It's the village's logic fight, dirt with dirt. You're enduring, but every cure feels like a coin toss. Picture yourself by that smoky fire, its heat, a faint tease on your fevered skin, the scent of herbs and decay heavy. As you wait for the leeches to drop, weary and uncertain, you're not healed, but you're still breathing for now. You're still scraping by in the Middle Ages, the air biting with the sharp, frosty tang of winter's approach. Your breath clouds the air, and your hands, still tender from that leechy cure at the healer's hut, are chapped and raw. The skin cracking under that gritty filth you're wearing like a second skin. Your boots crunch on frozen grass, its texture brittle and slick as you trudge toward the village. Winter's brutal test is closing in, and you're about to learn why the cold months were a relentless gauntlet of hunger and endurance. You're outside your hut, the dawn sky, a pale, unforgiving gray. The air's so cold it stings your lungs, and the ground's hard dusted with frost that glints like a cruel tease. Your tunic, heavy with damp from countless muddy days, hangs stiff and scratchy, barely keeping the chill at bay. The village is hushed, the usual clatter of buckets muted as if holding its breath. Historical records like 14th century manor accounts show winter was a killer, crops gone, livestock slaughtered or starving, and food stores like those turnips you bartered for were all that stood between you and an empty belly. Feel that ache in your fingers, the frost's icy bite. That's winter, and it's got you in its grip. Winter strips everything bare. The fields you toiled in are fallow, their soil frozen solid, smelling faintly of dead leaves and despair. Your hut's no sanctuary, its wattle and daub walls leak drafts the air inside, smoky and stale from a weak fire. You're rationing food, a handful of dried peas, their texture chalky and unyielding, or a sliver of bread so stale it crumbles like dust. You chew slowly, the taste earthy and bitter, your stomach still growling. Water's a chore. The stream you've avoided is half frozen, its surface glassy. The bucket's rope stiff and icy in your hands. Smell that faint smoky whiff of your fire, the pea's dusty tang. That's your lifeline, and it's fading fast. Here's a quirky tidbit: desperate folk ate famine foods like tree bark or nettles per 13th century chronicles. Imagine you're starving, scraping birch bark, its papery texture flaking under your knife, tasting like sawdust with a side of regret. You'd gag, but hunger's louder than pride, and the wood's dark and tempting whisper of more. Picture that bark's dry, woody scent, the forest's chilly hush, your stomach pleading for anything better. Historians still argue whether winter starvation was a constant or regional curse. Some say good lords stored grain for tenants. Others point to mass graves after brutal seasons like the 1315 famine. Either way, you're feeling the pinch. Your ribs are showing, your face gaunt, the cold carving lines into your skin. You're hoarding every scrap, hiding peas in a sack under your straw bed. Its prickly texture a constant jab. The village's tense neighbors eye each other's fires, jealous of extra smoke. Feel that hollow pang in your gut, sharp and relentless. That's winter's math, and it's not in your favor. Let's lighten it up. You're splitting firewood, your axe dull and heavy, when a neighbor bundled in rags offers a winter tip: rub snow on your hands to toughen them. You try it, the snow's biting chill, numbing your fingers, and quip, "Now I'm just a frozen fool." He laughs, his breath puffing, and you're both grinning, the air crisp with frost. Picture his gap-toothed chuckle, the snow's icy sting lingering your mood a touch warmer. For another laugh, imagine you try warming your hut by hanging an old sack over a drafty crack, only for it to flap like a sad flag. A kid outside yells, "Your house is waving for help." You mutter about rustic decor, but his giggles are catching and you're smirking. Medieval home improvement, always a comedy. Survival's about stretching scraps. You're boiling bones from a long-gone chicken. The broth thin but warm, its greasy scent. A faint comfort. You're wrapping rags around your feet, their texture coarse but better than frostbite. The church offers charity, a bowl of pottage, but it's a cold trek and the priest's eyeing sinners. Your grime keeps you anonymous, blending with the shivering crowd, but the cold's the real foe, and a dry cough starting sharp and worrying. Smell that faint icy whiff of frost. The broth's weak warmth. That's winter sharpening its edge. The secret's cruel here. Your filth's your cloak, but it won't fill your belly or warm your bones. Winter's grime, hunger, desperation clings tighter, and you're fighting to hold on. Picture yourself by a smoky fire, its heat. A soft whisper on your numb hands, the scent of frost and stale broth, heavy as you huddle close, weary and hollow. You're not full, but you're still here for. You're still forging through the Middle Ages, the air thick with the biting chill of a winter dusk and a faint musky whiff of damp wool that clings to you like a second shadow. Your hands, numb from scraping frost in the village's harsh cold, are cracked and raw. The skin stinging under that gritty filth you've worn since your first muddy days. Your boots caked with frozen mud crunch on the icy path, its texture slick and treacherous, pulling at each step. You're leaving the village, forced to travel, a dangerous gamble in this world. The road's a gauntlet of bandits and bad luck, and you're about to learn why every journey could be your last. You're on a rutted track, the sky. A heavy gray spitting sleet that pricks your face like tiny cold needles. The air's sharp, carrying the earthy tang of frozen soil. And a distant smoky hint of someone else's fire. You're hauling a sack of turnips, their knobby weight bruising your back, hoping to barter in the next village a day's walk away. Historical records like 14th century traveler accounts show roads were deadly, bandits, wolves, and weather could end you. And inns were a rare luxury. Your cloak's thin, sodden, dragging at your shoulders with a clammy grip. Feel that sting on your cheeks, the sack's rough tug. That's the road. And it's no friend. Travel's a high-stakes game. The path's uneven, studded with rocks that jab through your soles, the mud frozen in jagged clumps that trip you up. You're moving slow breath, puffing the cold, searing your lungs like a blade. No maps, just a villager's vague tip. Follow the split oak. You find it, its bark frosted and rough, but the path forks. And you're guessing. Bandits are the real threat. A twig snaps, the sound sharp in the quiet, and your heart leaps. The air shifts, a faint, sweaty whiff, someone's close. Smell that musky hint, the sleet's icy bite. That's danger. And it's breathing down your neck. Here's a quirky tidbit. Travelers carried pilgrim badges, tin trinkets pinned to cloaks, to signal piety and deter robbers per 13th century archaeological finds. You've got one, a cheap cross, its edges cold and sharp against your chest. You're clutching it, muttering a prayer from those church days, hoping it's a shield. It's not, but it's something. Picture that cross's chilly weight, the road's frosty silence, your fingers trembling with more than cold. Historians still argue whether roads were as deadly as stories claim. Some say banditry was hyped to keep peasants home. Others point to court records of ambushes. Either way, you're on edge. Your sack's heavy turnips bruising your spine, and you're scanning the trees, their branches bare and brittle. Your grime, that filthy cloak you've worn forever, makes you look like a nobody less worth robbing you hope. But the cold's gnawing your toes, numb boots, stiff and cracking. Feel that ache in your legs, the sleet's wet chill. That's the road's toll. And you're miles from rest. Let's lighten it up. You're trudging along when a peddler hauling a creaky cart offers a lucky rabbit's foot for sale. Keeps bandits at bay, he crows, waving the furry stump. You quip, "I'd rather keep my own feet," and he laughs, tossing you a dried apple instead. You're grinning, the air crisp with sleet, the apple's tart scent, a small gift. Picture his toothy chuckle, the fruit's faint sweetness, your mood lifting just a bit. For another laugh, imagine you try marking your path with a stick, scratching arrows in the dirt, only for a gust to erase them. A passing traveler snorts, planning to guide the wolves. You mutter about cartography dreams, but you're both chuckling, the sleet stinging less for a moment. Medieval navigation, always a wind-blown joke. Survival's about instinct. You're listening to the wind, the crunch of leaves, anything, not you. You're pacing yourself, steps careful, saving strength for the long haul. The sleet's worse, soaking your cloak, its texture cold and clammy. You're dreaming of the village's smoky fire, meager but warm. A barn's your best bet. For sleep it's straw, prickly but dry. If not, you're under a tree bark hard against your back praying you wake. Smell that faint icy whiff of sleet, the forest's damp musk. That's your world. And it's unforgiving. The secret's alive here. Your grimes, your disguise, blending you with the road's ragged souls, but the road's filth, mud, fear, desperation clings tighter. You're moving, but every step's a risk. Picture yourself huddled by a tiny fire, its smoky heat a faint tease on your frozen hands, the scent of wet wool and frost heavy as you watch the dark for shadows, weary and alert. You're not safe, but you're still going for now. You're still navigating the Middle Ages, the air thick with the damp, musty scent of wet earth and a faint sour whiff of your own sweat-soaked tunic. Your legs ache from that perilous road you braved, and your boots caked with frozen mud feel like lead, their texture stiff and gritty against your blistered feet. You're back in the village, but there's no rest. The law's harsh justice looms like a storm cloud, and you're about to face medieval courts where guilt or innocence dangles on bizarre trials that make less sense than a fevered dream. You're standing in the village square, the ground packed dirt, cold and uneven, pressing into your soles like a grudging judge. The morning's raw, the air sharp with the smoky tang of nearby fires and a faint metallic hint from a blacksmith's forge humming nearby. A crowd's gathered, their woolen cloaks brushing you, reeking of damp and toil. Someone's on trial, a man accused of stealing a neighbor's pig maybe, that one you saw rooting in the streets. Historical records like 14th century court rolls show medieval justice was swift and strange, leaning on ordeals or oaths over evidence. You're watching, heart pounding, knowing one slip could put you in his spot. Feel that prickle on your skin, sharp and uneasy. That's the law, and it's got eyes. Justice here's more spectacle than sense. The accused, a scrawny man with a face like weathered leather, swears his innocence on a rusty relic, its surface cold and pitted under his trembling hands. If that fails, he might face trial by water, tied up and tossed in that icy stream you've sidestepped its chill, waiting to judge. Sink and you're innocent. Float and you're guilty. You're picturing it, the water's glassy bite, the crowd's shouts fading as you sink. It's madness, but it's the law. Your grime, that filthy cloak you've worn since your muddy start, blends you with the muttering throng, but you're keeping quiet. Smell that faint, earthy whiff of the square. The crowd's smoky warmth. That's the village holding its breath. Here's a quirky tidbit: some trials used hot iron ordeals per 13th century legal texts. The accused carried a red-hot iron a few steps. If the burn didn't fester, they were innocent. Imagine you're forced to grip it, the iron's searing heat radiating, its acrid metallic scent burning your nose. You'd clench your jaw, the pain blazing, praying for a clean heel. Picture that iron's glow, the crowd's hushed stares, your hands trembling with more than fear. Historians still argue whether these trials were fair or just crowd control. Some say they scared folks straight. Others think they were rigged, hitting the poor hardest. Either way, you're nervous. Stealing's tempting when you're hungry from winter's grip, but the law's not playing. You're dodging trouble, keeping your mouth shut. Even a joke about the church's heavy hand could land you here. Your hands fidget, the dirt under your nails gritty, a reminder to stay low. Feel that knot in your gut, tight and heavy. That's the law's shadow stretching long. Let's lighten it up. You're watching the trial when the accused tries a dramatic plea, kneeling and wailing about his pure heart. A woman nearby snorts. Pure as my pig's slop, you quip. At least slop's honest. And she cackles her laugh. Rough, but warm. The air's sharp with smoke, and you're both smirking, tension easing for a second. Picture her sly nod, the relic's musty tang lingering, your mood a touch lighter. For another laugh, imagine you try helping the trial by offering to guard the relic, only to fumble it, the metal clanging on the ground. The crowd gasps and a kid yells, "He's cursed the saint." You mutter about butterfingers, not blasphemy, but the judge's glare says you're not helping. Medieval justice always a fumble away from chaos. Survival's about blending in. You bow your head, mutter oaths, and avoid the Lord's men, their chainmail clinking, their leather belts, smelling of oil and menace. If called as a witness, you're swearing on that relic, its weight heavy, your words careful. One slip, perjury, or a hint of those witchy rumors could trap you. Your grime's your shield, but it won't stop a noose. Smell that faint, smoky whiff of the crowd's fires. The air thick with judgment. That's the only warmth here. And it's not yours. The secret's clear. Your filth hides you in the crowd, but the law's grime, arbitrary, brutal, cuts deeper. You're slipping through, but every trial's a warning. Picture yourself by a smoky fire, its heat, a faint tease on your chilled hands, the scent of mud and fear, heavy, as you watch the crowd scatter weary and wary. You're not guilty, but you're not free for now. You're still scraping through the Middle Ages, the air heavy with the damp, earthy scent of autumn leaves and a faint, acrid whiff of a distant bonfire that lingers like a warning. Your hands, still raw from clutching that trial relic in the village square, are rough with calluses that texture gritty and cold as you tuck them into your tattered cloak. Your boots sink into the muddy path, its surface slick and chilly, tugging at your weary feet. The village hums with its usual grind, but there's a strange undercurrent superstition. Its tight grip steers every choice, and you're about to learn why charms and omens held more sway than reason ever could. You're trudging past a cluster of huts, the ground muddy and studded with pebbles that jab your worn soles, each step a small sting. The evening's chilly, the air sharp enough to nip your nose, your breath puffing faintly in the dusk. A woman's tying a red ribbon to her door, its fabric soft but frayed, muttering about warding off ill spirits, her voice low and urgent. You'd scoff, but everyone's at it, eyes on the sky, hands on charms. Historical records like 13th century church sermons show superstition was woven into life. Clouds, crows, even spilled ale carried omens. You're feeling it too, the weight of unseen eyes, the village's pulse thrumming with fear and faith. Feel that prickle on your neck, sharp and uneasy. That's superstition whispering in the dark. Reason's a stranger here. You're dodging black cats, those witchy rumors still sting because a hiss could spark gossip. You're watching the sky, a red sunset, its glow warm but eerie, might mean rain or ruin depending on the teller. A neighbor, a wiry man with a limp, swears a bone charm. Its texture, smooth and cold, saved his cow from sickness. You're skeptical, but you're pocketing a pebble its weight, reassuring just in case. The church frowns on this, calling it pagan, but even the priest hides an amulet under his robe, its glint betraying him. Smell that faint, smoky whiff of the bonfire, the air heavy with the ribbon's faint dye. That's the village burning its fears. Here's a quirky tidbit: sneezing was thought to let demons in per 12th century folklore. You sneeze in the market, the sound sharp in the bustle, and everyone freezes, staring like you've hexed the harvest. You stammer, "God save me," quick to dodge glares, the air thick with the market's herby tang. Picture their wide eyes, the sneezes echo, your heart skipping as you fumble for words. Historians still argue whether superstitions empowered or paralyzed folk. Some say charms offered hope in a brutal world. Others think they fueled fear like those witch hunt whispers. Either way, you're caught in the web. You're tying a sprig of rosemary to your belt, its prickly leaves sharp, its clean, fleeting scent. A small comfort. Your grime, that filthy cloak you've worn since your muddy start, blends you in, but you're avoiding cursed spots like the crossroads where a thief was hanged, its air heavy with a rotting whiff. Feel that unease in your gut, tight and heavy. That's the village's magic, real or not. Let's lighten it up. You're passing a hut when a kid bold as brass tosses you a lucky acorn, claiming it'll charm the stars. You catch it, quip, "I'll take a charmed nap instead," and toss it back, making him giggle. The air's cool with dusk, and you're both grinning, the acorn's woody scent lingering. Picture his cheeky. Toss the rosemary's sharp whiff, your mood a touch lighter. For another laugh, imagine you try reading an omen by staring at a cloud, only to trip over a root sprawling in the mud. A woman nearby cackles. Sky's not talking, but the dirt is. You mutter about cosmic advice, brushing off the cold, slimy muck, but you're chuckling too. Medieval omens always grounded in reality. Survival's about playing along. You nod at omens carry a charm, avoid stepping on churchyard cracks, their stones cold and slick underfoot. You're listening to gossip. A crow landed on a hut, and now its owner's sick, echoing that healer's feverish warnings. You steer clear, boots squelching. The church's rules clash with these beliefs, but you're hedging bets, muttering prayers, and gripping that pebble. Your grime's your shield, but superstition's a leash pulling you tight. Smell that faint herby whiff of your rosemary. The dusk's chilly bite, that's your fragile armor, and it's all you've got. The secret's woven in. Your filth blends you with the superstitious crowd, but the village's grime, fear, irrationality binds tighter. You're slipping through, but every omen's a test. Picture yourself by a smoky fire, its heat. A soft whisper on your chilled hands, the scent of mud and rosemary heavy as you clutch your pebble, listening for crows in the dark, weary and wary. You're not cursed, but you're not free for now. You're still threading through the Middle Ages, the air thick with the damp, musky scent of wet straw, and a faint, sharp tang of wood smoke drifting from village chimneys. Your hands still clutching that superstitious pebble you picked up under those wary village eyes are rough with calluses, the texture gritty and cold as you shove them into your tattered cloak. Your boots sink into the muddy path, its surface slick and chilly, tugging at your aching feet like a grudging tide. You're about to glimpse a quieter strength in this harsh world, women's hidden power. Despite society's iron rules, women wielded subtle influence, and you're about to learn how they bent the odds to survive. You're outside a low hut, the morning air crisp, stinging your cheeks with a frosty bite that lingers. The ground's littered with straw, its texture prickly and damp under your soles, and a faint earthy whiff of herbs wafts from an open door. Inside, a woman, let's call her Agnes, is kneading dough, her hands dusted with flour, the air warm with the yeasty scent of rising bread. Historical records like 14th century household accounts show women ran the domestic world, cooking, brewing, healing, even trading on the sly. Their power was quiet, woven into the village's heartbeat. You're watching Agnes, her face lined but fierce, and you're starting to see it. Feel that warmth from her fire, the dough's soft give under her hands. That's her domain, and it's no small thing. Women here are hemmed in by the church's heavy hand, by lords, by men. They can't own land or speak in court per medieval laws, but they're not powerless. Agnes brews ale, its bubbly tang filling the hut, and sells it to market traders on the down low. She's the village healer too, mixing herbs like that rosemary you tied to your belt into salves. Their texture greasy and cool. You've got a cut from your road-weary days, and she's dabbing it, her touch firm, the salve's sharp herby scent cutting through the smoky air. She's no scholar, but she's keeping you patched. Smell that faint, clean whiff of the salve, the fire's smoky glow. That's her rebellion, quiet but real. Here's a quirky tidbit. Women often ran alehouses from their homes, doubling as gossip hubs per 13th century tax rolls. Imagine Agnes pouring you a mug, the ale warm and flat, its wooden cup smooth but splintery. She's dishing village dirt, her voice low, maybe steering a rumor to save someone from those witchy whispers. You sip the ale's earthy taste, grounding you, and you see her strength. She's the village's pulse, shaping it from the shadows. Picture that mug's weight, the ale's yeasty tang, her words sharp as her gaze. Historians still argue whether women's roles were empowering or oppressive. Some say their domestic sway gave leverage. Others think it chained them to endless toil. Either way, Agnes is unbreakable. She's dodging the church's glare, bartering under the table, even teaching her daughter to read secretly, since literacy's a man's game. Her hands rough as bark knead dough, with a rhythm that screams defiance. Your grime, that filthy cloak you've worn since your muddy start, blends you in, but you're learning from her survivals in the quiet moves. Feel that cut's ache easing under her salve, the hut's warmth sinking in. That's her skill, and it's saving you. Let's lighten it up. You're helping Agnes stir a pot of pottage when she catches you sniffing it like a picky chef. Expecting a feast, she teases, her eyes glinting. You quip, "Just checking for dragon's breath," and she laughs, tossing in an extra onion with a wink. The air's rich with the pot's steamy tang, and you're both grinning. Picture her quick chuckle, the onion's sharp sting, your mood lifting in the warmth. For another laugh, imagine you try helping by fetching her herbs, only to grab nettles by mistake, your hands stinging like fire. She smirks, planning to spice my grave. You mutter about herbal enthusiasm, but her laughter's warm, and you're chuckling through the pain. Medieval teamwork, always a prickly lesson. Survival's about mimicking Agnes. Stay quiet, work hard, listen sharp. She's showing you allies, the weaver trading cloth, the widow who knows every rumor. You're dodging trouble, leering men, prying priests, while her hut warm with bread and grit feels like a haven. Your grime's your shield, but her strength's your guide. Power's not loud, it's steady. Smell that faint, yeasty whiff of her bread, the fire's smoky glow. That's her legacy, feeding more than bodies. The secret's alive here. Your filth blends you with the village, but women's grime, overlooked labor, hidden grit is the real force. You're enduring thanks to their quiet fire. Picture yourself by Agnes's fire, its smoky heat soaking into your tired hands, the scent of bread and herbs heavy as you watch her work unbowed. You're not her equal, but you're learning for now. You're still clawing through the Middle Ages, the air thick with the acrid sting of smoke and a faint metallic tang of blood carried on the wind. Your hands, still dusted with flour from Agnes's warm hut, are clammy with sweat, the texture gritty as you grip your cloak tighter. Your boots sink into churned earth, its surface muddy and slick, reeking of damp soil and a sharper edge fear. War's constant threat is no distant tale today. It's close, and you're about to learn how battles could turn your village into a battlefield faster than a spark catches straw. You're on the village's edge, the twilight sky bruised with streaks of red casting an eerie glow over the fields you've toiled in. The air's heavy, carrying the distant thud of hooves and the sharp clink of armor knights. like those you trained with, but these aren't playing. A skirmish is brewing nearby. Maybe a lord's feud, or a raid, and your village is in its path. Historical records like 14th century chronicles show war was a fact of life. Local clashes flared fast, torching crops and homes. Your frozen heart pounding as shouts echo from the woods, the air sharp with their urgency. Feel that tremor in your legs, the smoke's bitter sting. That's war, and it's too close for comfort. War's chaos doesn't care if you're a soldier. Raiders could burn your hut, steal your hard-won turnips, or worse. The air shifts, a sour whiff of burning thatch from a nearby village someone's already hit. You're hiding behind a haystack, its straw prickly and damp, scratching your palms as you peek out. The village is scrambling, women like Agnes haul kids to the church's stone walls, a shaky refuge. Men grab pitchforks, their wooden handles worn but solid, knowing they're no match for swords. Smell that faint charred tang on the breeze, the haze musty whiff. That's your world catching fire. Here's a quirky tidbit. Peasants sometimes used war charms to dodge danger per 13th century folklore. A woman presses a knotted cord into your hand, its fibers coarse and waxy, swearing, "It'll turn blades away." You're clutching it, half believing its weight, a small anchor as you crouch, the air thick with smoke. Those superstitious days taught you to hedge your bets. Picture that cord's rough grip, the shouts growing closer, your heart racing with doubt and hope. Historians still argue whether peasants were helpless or cunning in war. Some say they fled or fell. Others point to records of villages setting traps for raiders. Either way, you're stuck. You're dodging open fields, sticking to shadows, your grime, that filthy cloak you've worn since your muddy start, blending you with the earth. The smoke stings your eyes and you're coughing, the sound sharp and risky in the dusk. Loyalty's a mess, your lord might demand you fight, but the other side's promising mercy. You're not choosing. You're just breathing. Feel that burn in your throat, the air's ashy bite. That's war's welcome. And it's not kind. Let's lighten it up. You're crouched by the haystack when a villager frantic shoves a battle plan at you, a stick he claims is blessed. You quip, "Unless it swings itself, I'm doomed," and he laughs a nervous bark, the air sharp with smoke. You're both grinning, clutching your sticks, like fools. Picture his wild eyes, the cord's waxy scent, your tension easing for a second. For another laugh, imagine you try signaling for help by waving your cloak only to tangle it in a thorn bush, the fabric ripping. A kid nearby snickers, you're flagging the crows, you mutter about tactical banners, but you're chuckling, freeing the cloak with a muddy tug. Medieval heroic's always a thorny mess. Survival's about staying low. You're moving fast but quiet, your steps light despite the mud's cold grip. You're eyeing escape routes, that steep banked stream you've avoided its cover, tempting. Agnes's grit inspires you. You're channeling her steady fire, saving your strength. Your grime's your cloak. But war's filth smoke, blood betrayal clings tighter. The church is a target. So you're steering clear. Smell that faint ashy whiff, the haze damp musk. That's your cue to slip away quick and silent. The secret's raw here. Your filth hides you in the chaos, but war's grime destruction, fear cuts deeper. You're slipping through, but every shout's a reminder you're not safe. Picture yourself crouched by a smoky fire, its heat. A faint tease on your trembling hands. The scent of ash and mud heavy as you listen for hooves in the dark, weary and alert. You're no warrior, but you're still here for now. You're still holding on in the Middle Ages, the air thick with the crisp, earthy scent of sawdust, and a faint, oily whiff of polished wood that fills the space with a quiet promise. Your hands still trembling from dodging that war's chaos are sore and splintered, the texture rough as you brush off mud from your cloak. Your boots, caked with battlefield muck, creak on a wooden floor, its surface worn but solid, a steady anchor under your weary feet. You're in a craftsman's workshop, a rare island of stability, and you're about to learn how a guild's secret edge could be your lifeline in this brutal world. You're inside a carpenter's shop, the morning light filtering through a narrow window, casting a soft glow on tools hung neatly on the wall, their metal glinting faintly. The air's warm, tinged with the sharp tang of resin and the musky scent of fresh-cut oak. A welcome change from the smoke and fear you've fled. You're an apprentice lucky break, learning to shape wood under a master craftsman, a burly man with hands like weathered leather. Historical records like 14th century guild charters show crafts like carpentry offered security, steady work meals, even a shred of respect. You're holding a chisel, its handle smooth but heavy, and a flicker of hope stirs in your chest. Feel that weight in your palm, the wood's grainy give under your blade. That's a future if you don't fumble it. Guilds were lifelines. They trained you, fed you, and shielded you from the market scams or war's fallout. You're carving a beam, the wood's texture yielding slowly, each stroke dusting the floor with sawdust that tickles your nose. The master's watching his breath, carrying a faint ale tang, grunting corrections to your grip. You're not just crafting, you're carving a place in the village. Guilds had strict rules, no shoddy work, no cheating clients. Break them, and you're back to the field's grind. Smell that faint, woody whiff of the oak, the workshop's warm hush. That's your new world, and it's steady. Here's a quirky tidbit: guilds used secret handshakes or symbols to weed out fakes per 13th century trade records. The master tests you, flashing a quick hand sign, 2 fingers crossed, subtle as a blink. You fumble it, your fingers stiff from cold, and he squints, muttering, "You're no spy, just slow." You're practicing now, the gesture awkward, the air warm with the fire's glow. Picture that sign's quick flash, the sawdust's dusty tang, your focus sharpening despite the stumble. Historians still argue whether guilds lifted folks up or boxed them in. Some say they sparked a middle class. Others think their rules stifled new ideas. Either way, you're grateful. You're eating bread and stew, the broth warm and savory, its texture thick with barley, a far cry from winter's scraps. You're sleeping in the workshop's loft, the straw mattress prickly but dry, a haven from the cold. Your grime, that filthy cloak you've worn since your muddy start, is less noticeable here, dusted with sawdust like the others. You're learning: measure twice, cut once, and don't irk the master. Feel that ache in your arms easing as you carve, that skill growing slow but sure. Let's lighten it up. You're sanding a plank when the master catches you humming a modern tune off key. "What's that?" "A cat's funeral," he grumbles. You quip, "Just serenading the wood," and he snorts, tossing you a rag to sing to. You're both chuckling, the air rich with resin. Your mood a touch brighter. Picture his gruff smirk, the wood's clean scent, the moment soft and human. For another laugh, imagine you try organizing the tools, lining them up like a fussy scholar, only for an apprentice to nudge them, crooked, grinning. "This ain't a lord's library," he teases. You mutter about crafty chaos, but you're laughing, resetting them with a playful shove. Medieval teamwork, always a nudge away from mischief. Survival's about fitting in. You mimic the apprentices, quiet, focused, quick, to laugh at the master's bad puns. You guard your tools. A stolen chisel could cost your spot. The workshop's a bubble safe from the court's harsh rulings or witchy rumors, but it's not perfect. Rivals snipe and the master's temper flares if you botch a joint. Your grime's your shield, blending you with the dusty crew, but skill's your real armor now. Smell that faint oily scent of the whetstone sharpening your blade. The fire's warm hum. That's your edge, and you're honing it. The secret's refined here. Your filth blends you with the guild, but the craftsman's grime, sweat, sawdust pride is your new strength. You're not just surviving. You're building. Picture yourself by a smoky fire, the workshop's warmth soaking into your tired hands, the scent of wood and oil heavy, as you carve a small keepsake, steady and hopeful. You're no master, but you're crafting something solid for now. You're still clinging to life in the Middle Ages. The air soft, with the warm, earthy scent of fresh-cut wood, and a faint, smoky whiff of a dying fire that glows like a fading star. Your hands, calloused from the carpenter's tools in that steady workshop, are dusted with sawdust, its texture fine and gritty as you brush it off your cloak. Your boots, still muddy from countless treks, rest on the workshop's solid floor, its worn planks smooth and grounding under your soles. You're nearing the end of this grueling journey, and it's time to uncover hope's quiet spark, the small joys and clever tricks that kept medieval spirits flickering even in the darkest hours. You're sitting in the workshop's loft, the evening settling in like a soft blanket, the air cool but gentle, carrying the faint sweet tang of dried herbs hung in the rafters. The village outside hums softly, laughter, a clinking mug, the low bleat of a goat weaving through the dusk. You're holding a carved wooden spoon, your first real success, its surface smooth and warm in your palm, a small triumph against the odds. Historical records, like 14th century household inventories, show people clung to simple comforts: a shared ale, a sung ballad, a whittled toy. You're starting to feel it, the glimmers that made this harsh world bearable. Feel that spoon's gentle weight, the fire's soft crackle. That's pride, and it's yours. Hope here is subtle, woven into the everyday. You're joining the apprentices for a rare night off, gathered around a fire outside the workshop. Someone passes a jug of ale, its yeasty warmth cutting through the chilly night, the liquid's texture bubbly and sharp on your tongue. A woman strums a battered lute, its strings twanging brightly, and you're humming along, your voice rusty but alive. These moments, music stories. A warm bite were lifelines. You're laughing at a tale about a bumbling trader, maybe one from that chaotic market, and for once the world feels lighter, softer. Smell that faint, smoky whiff of the fire, the ale's earthy tang, that's joy flickering in the dark. Here's a quirky tidbit: medieval folk loved riddles per 13th century manuscripts. An apprentice tosses one out. I'm tall when young, short when old. What am I? You guess a tree wrong, and he grins, saying, a candle you plank. The group roars and you fire back with your own, stumping him, the fire's heat kissing your face. The victory's sweeter than the ale, the air warm with camaraderie. Picture his sulky grin, the fire's ashy scent, your heart lifting in the glow. Historians still argue whether these joys balanced the grind. Some say they built resilience, like the quiet strength of women you've seen. Others think they were fleeting escapes from hunger and fear. Either way, you're soaking it in. You're swapping tales about that muddy market chase, exaggerating your stumbles into legend. You're carving trinkets, small crosses like that pilgrim badge from the road to trade, or gift their wood smooth under your knife. Your grime, that filthy cloak you've worn since your muddy start, fits right in, dusted with sawdust, blending you with this ragtag crew. Feel that ease in your chest, warm and steady. That's belonging. And it's precious. Let's lighten it up. You're trying to dance to the lute, ale loosened and clumsy, when you step on an apprentice's foot. He yelps, you're stomping my legacy, you quip, just carving my mark, and spin away, both of you laughing, the air bright with the lute's twang. Picture his mock glare, the fire's smoky warmth. Your steps lighter for a moment. For another laugh, imagine you try teaching the group a modern word, chill, to describe the night. They mishear it as ill, and one gasps, you're cursing us. You backtrack, muttering about cool vibes, but they're cackling and you're grinning too. Medieval slang, always a translation tangle. Survival's about savoring these sparks. You're hoarding memories, a tuna riddle like those winter turnips, knowing they'll carry you through lean times. You're picking up tricks, stretching a meal with wild herbs, their sharp green scent, a faint promise. Mending your cloak with a bone needle, its point smooth but sharp. The guild's stability anchors you, but these joys, shared laughs, a carved spoon, are your real armor. Your grime's your shield, but hope's your fuel, burning steady. Smell that faint herby whiff from the rafters, the fire's gentle glow. That's life, stubborn and sweet. The secret's complete. Your filth was your ticket, blending you into this world of mud, sweat, and grit. But the real secret was resilience. Yours, the village's. Those women's quiet fire. You've dodged plagues, wars, and whispers, and you're here laughing by a fire, carving your mark. Picture yourself by that glowing fire, its smoky heat warming your hands, the scent of ale and wood heavy. As you carve another spoon, the world soft and still. You're not just surviving, you're living for now. Now let's ease you out of this medieval world, your mind heavy with its scents and struggles. Picture the fire fading its embers, glowing soft like stars, sinking into a quiet night. The air's cooler, now wrapping you in a gentle chill, the faint whiff of wood smoke lingering, soothing like a whispered lullaby. Your hands, once gritty with dirt and sawdust, feel lighter, resting easy, the weight of the Middle Ages slipping away. You're drifting from the village, its muddy paths and smoky huts blurring into memory, soft and distant like a dream you're ready to leave. The world's quiet now, just your breath slow and steady, carrying you to rest. Let the fire's last spark fade. The darkness warm, the silence deep. You've survived, you've learned, and now it's time to sleep. Sweet dreams, traveler, until the next journey calls.